I start this portrait with a charcoal sketch, as you can see. It's just rough, but it's got the main key proportions to all the main areas of the picture. It's in oil, so I'm just laying in an area where I'll be able to compare colours. So that area of the face, I can see obviously a lot of flesh tones. Some are pinker, some are yellower, some are lighter and some are darker. And by starting in that corner, I'm just comparing them to each other and working round. So now, as you can see, I'm getting pinker and pinker, and right next to that very yellow, and now I'm going into a light pink. The canvas has a ground on it already, which is very warm, sort of burnt sienna, a grey burnt sienna, and that gives me the middle tones, which is why these light tones show up immediately. It would be harder to do this straight onto a white canvas, but because it's got this middle tone ground on it, we see straight away these lights popping out. I don't usually do too much correcting at this stage. I just want to get as many of those various light tones on, and then start on the middle tones. And now, as you can see, going into the lighter tones of his moustache, which in the photograph doesn't look very light, but in reality it looks lighter on him. So I'm going to push that out a little bit more. And already now, just by those tones, we can see the face forming. And I won't bother correcting any of those tones until I've got a few more on. So straight into the darks here to compare these darkest darks, which is where I've gone to now, with the lightest lights and the middle tones. And then as I adjust the tonal values, which are really just, I guess, the most important thing, I'll be looking at the colours as well. And every time I put a block of colour in, an area, a shape of colour, I'm re-examining the drawing. The drawing is just something you're constantly questioning, and every brushstroke is from an observation of not only the light and the dark on the colour, but the drawing. So that's why I don't do the drawing very accurately at the start of the picture. It's just a proportional drawing, because I don't want to get into the don't follow the mistake of just copying the drawing that's underneath. It's much better if each brushstroke is from an observation. That way it's constantly being corrected through observation rather than mistakes being compounded because of an early error in a drawing. You know, the process of painting is just completely one of moulding, pushing and pulling the colours around, the shapes around, the tones around, and it shouldn't be too formularized. It's a question of constantly re-examining, questioning everything you're doing, and pushing and pulling them and re-examining them again. Sometimes even the shapes that you come out with aren't necessarily exactly the shapes that are in front of you, because you're mixing to some degree the real physical look of the thing against what you feel, and sometimes the feeling can make you emphasize colors, tones or shapes in a different way to just seeing them neutrally without feeling. So you might want to pull colors out, or shape, or a characteristic of the face you might pull out, At this early stage, I'm not doing too much of that because I just want to lay in as much information as possible, and then once I've got that information in, I can decide what to emphasize, what to soften, where to put more contrast and less contrast, where to put sharp edges and where to put soft edges. And all of that leads your eye around the picture and harmonizes and softens or exaggerates and gives accents, and depending on what you want. With the hat virtually blocked in here and the darks that go underneath the rim of the hat, which relate to the dark on his shoulder, we start to get a really good idea of the tonal values now. They're still going to be approximate because as I go on, they're sure to be changed, and the background will have a lot to do with that. So I just keep plodding on, getting all of these areas filled out. As you can see, it's rare that I'll go back to an area until I've actually got round the whole. I don't find that works for me. I think it's a very costly way to paint. You use up a lot of time to keep going back and correcting, and before you've got round. It's much easier to see the corrections when you've got it all filled in, because otherwise what happens is you correct something and then you do another area and you suddenly find that the correction needs correcting, and that just goes on and on in circles. So all I'm doing is working my way around one go at each area, more or less, until I've got this background on now, and then for the first time I'll be able to see everything together and start to make a judgment. I've put the right hand side of the background darker and cooler, but I'm not happy with that, so I've warmed up everything in the back, but left the left hand side still warmer, but it was a little bit too strong there. Now I can see what areas need lightening and what need what areas need to be made darker. So I'll just put a bit on the t-shirt. Now I'm coming into the face, which looks a little bit too flat and soft at the moment, so I'm deepening these colours down here. Getting a lot more warmth into them. You have to remember it's easy to soften back colours and pale them back with a little bit of white, but if you paint the whole thing too pale and without enough colour in it, and then at the end you cannot it's very hard to revitalize everything. It would mean repainting the whole thing, which would be desperately difficult. May as well start a new painting. So yeah, it's worth getting in these colours a little bit strong, and you probably find they'll be right anyway. That gives us a little bit more contrast there on his moustache and beard. To get these details in the moustache and beard to make it look really like hair, I'm just working wet in wet, obviously, with the oil, and just gently letting them brush into each other to leave not a smooth gradient edge, but just strands of brush stroke going into each other. A few touches around the jacket just to bring that with 1 or 2 touches of detail, not much, because obviously the detail is in the face and the eyes and everything. Final touches are on the lips and eyes and, well, anything you see that might need it, but in this case I haven't really done much around the mouth, so I'm just sorting out the lips a little bit here. Always the eyes get my last bit of attention, because it's sometimes very easy to leave those behind. You do them and you're just looking around at shapes, but of course that's really the focus of the picture. And so those shapes are not like all the other shapes. They've got to just be given a little bit more attention. So I always have to remind myself to go back to the eyes and give them a last look over and see if there's anything that needs adjusting on them. And of course the character of the look on the face is going to come from the eyes. Just where my brush is now, that top of that eyelid, how heavy it is, and the angle of it. Same with the mouth, although in this case the mouth is slightly less important, but just little nudges of the eye will make a big difference to the feel of the expression of the face. And there we have it.